Hello, and welcome to Biblical Scrolls, where we take a deeper dive into the hard to interpret, the obscure, or even the misinterpreted passages of Scripture. We will also look at apocryphal and pseudepigraphal texts and other historical manuscripts. We'll be using a variety of sources, so if you're committed to just one version of the Bible, this channel may not be for you. Now let's dig into today's passage. Today's passage is Luke 15:11 through 32. We're going to be using the New American Standard and be looking at the story of the prodigal son in a hopefully different way than what you may have been taught in church. Earlier in this chapter, Jesus teaches on the lost sheep and the lost coin. And like those two parables, the parable of the prodigal son is also directed at the Pharisees. Let's read verse 1. It says, "Now all the tax collectors and sinners were coming near him to listen to him. Both the Pharisees and the scribes began to grumble, saying, 'This man receives sinners and eats with them.'" The Pharisees are upset that Jesus hangs out with those less than desirable people, tax collectors and sinners. As in many of Jesus' parables, they aren't just meant to be interpreted, but also interpret you, the listener. Let's read verse 11. "And he said, a man had two sons." So there was a man who had two sons. Okay, notice how Jesus starts this parable. He does not say there was a prodigal son. No, he says a certain man had two sons. "And the younger of them said to his father, 'Father, give me the share of estate that falls to me.' So he divided his wealth between them." So to say to your father, "Give me my inheritance now," while he's still alive, is a massive insult. But the crazy thing is, he actually does it, and also gives the older son his inheritance as well. Now let's read 13 through 15. It says, "And not many days later, the younger son gathered everything together and went on a journey into a distant country. And there he squandered his estate with loose living. Now when he had spent everything, a severe famine occurred in that country, and he began to be impoverished. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, and he sent him into his fields to feed the swine." Now feeding pigs here could capture the attention of the first century Jew. Pigs are not kosher, and one of the most unclean animals there is. And even worse, in verse 16, we see that the son desired to eat the pig's food. He was that desperate. It says he would have given gladly, filled his stomach with the pods that the swine were eating, but no one was giving anything to him. Let's read 17 through 19. It says, "But when he came to his senses, he said, 'How many of my father's hired men have more than enough bread, but I am dying here with hunger. And I will get up and go to my father. I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight. I am no longer worthy to be called your son, but make me as one of your hired men.'" Does this sound like a truly repentant heart? Does it sound to you like someone who has hit rock bottom, discovered his erred ways, and is willing to turn around? I think so. He wasn't planning on coming home, minimizing his sin or making excuses. No, he says, "I have sinned against you and against God." But look at what the father does in verse 20. It says, "So he got up and came to his father, but when he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion for him and ran and embraced him and kissed him." Now this is interesting, especially in the first century. Noble, wealthy landowners like this didn't run. There was a certain walk they did to dignify themselves, and the slower the walk, the more noble and wealthy they were. So you have a son that breaks the family apart, goes off, wastes it all, and a father who breaks social norms by running to him when he returns. He doesn't care about how he looks in front of others. So who is the prodigal son? In this story, he represents the tax collectors and sinners. Who's the father? Well, in this story, he represents God. A lot of Jesus' parables represent how God deals with people. Now let's read 21 through 24. "And the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his slaves, Quickly bring out the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and sandals on his feet. And bring the fattened calf, kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and has come to life again. He was lost and has been found. And they began to celebrate. So we know who the father is, and we know who the prodigal is. And actually, the robe that was put on him represents salvation. There's other teaching in Scripture that connects robes to salvation, but we're not going to go into all that right now. Let's talk about the older son. Let's read 25 through 32. It says, Now his older son was in the field, and when he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing, and he summoned one of the servants and began inquiring what these things could be. And they said to him, Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fattened calf, because he has received him back safe and sound. But he became angry and was not willing to go in. And his father came out and began pleading with him. But he answered and said to his father, Look, for so many years I have been serving you, and I have never neglected a command of yours, and yet you have never given me a young goat, so that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came, who has devoured your wealth with prostitutes, you killed the fattened calf for him? And he said to him, Son, you have always been with me, and all that is mine is yours, but we had to celebrate and rejoice, for this brother of yours was dead and has begun to live. He was lost and has been found. So in verse 12 earlier, remember that the older son got his share of the inheritance too. So why is he so upset here? The point Jesus makes here is not about the prodigal son at all, but rather with the older brother. Who is the older brother? He is furious. He refuses to go to the party. The father has to come to him because he refuses the table fellowship with his own brother. He doesn't even claim his own brother. Look at verse 30. It says, When this son of yours, not my brother, this son of yours. Wow. The older brother represents the Pharisees, the ones grumbling in verses 1 and 2 about who Jesus is eating with. From the outside, it looks like the older brother is the rule follower. He serves the father. He plays the part on the outside, but in his heart, he is just as lost as the prodigal son. But what's worse is that he doesn't even know it. A better name for this parable is the man with two lost sons. At the beginning, the younger son starts off in a bad place, but by the end, he is repentant and comes home. The older son is left unrepentant at the end of the story. Look at verse 32. But we had to celebrate and rejoice, for this brother of yours was dead and has begun to live. He was lost and is found. This brother of yours. The father reverses what the older son said in verse 30, son of yours, to no, this is your brother. Jesus is saying to the Pharisees, these sinners and tax collectors that you are judging, they are your brothers. And God is rejoicing because they have finally come home. Why aren't you rejoicing? This parable is all about religious pride and arrogance. So, are you like the older brother? Or can you celebrate the way the Father does? I hope you enjoyed this video and maybe even learned something. Please subscribe and give a thumbs up. Be blessed, be encouraged, and I'll see you in the next video.